Okay. Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us in our first session in our new webinar series, Thirsty Thursdays. But before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. Obviously, this session is being recorded. Everyone will be muted during the session, but we encourage you to ask questions. You will see a Q&A icon on the bottom toolbar in the middle. From there, you can ask any type of question you need, and then we will get to them at the end of the session. When you leave, there will be a brief survey that will pop up. We would appreciate if you would complete it. It really does help us get the right information out to all of you, whether it is for a future webinar topic or any particular follow-up item. Many of you may be familiar with the BMC CompuWare AC webcasts. And like those previous webcasts, there is a theme. Thirsty Thursdays is all about DevOps. We will be exploring various concepts and tools for both development and operations to improve velocity, efficiency, and quality within your organizations. So it only makes sense to kick off the series with relax, it's only DevOps. Our first two sessions are introductions to some common principles for DevOps. I'd like to say DevOps for dummies, but none of you are dummies. And after that, we will start focusing on specific solutions or the different components of the software development lifecycle that could be incorporated into the DevOps world. And I do need to cover our legal notice. While this session will not be touching on any specific BMC products, current or future, upcoming sessions will be. So just to briefly mention this, if any product specific or product future is discussed, it may not be disclosed to any third parties and can only be used for any person, for use for any other use and attended. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ward and Mark, and let's go, guys.
Thank you, Terry. I'm Mark Schettenhelm, and I'm a senior product manager at BMC. And I've been at BMC and before that CompuWare for over 30 years, and currently product manager for our ISPW source control management build and deploy solution. And I'm also product manager for Abendade and Expediter. And I'm very happy that so many of you took time out of your busy schedules to go to our first Thursday. Was it see, I can't even say it. Thirsty Thursday, where you're thirsty for knowledge. And we hope you'll find this interesting. It'll be a nice introduction to DevOps concepts that we'll build on later. So let me turn it over to Ward.
Hey, thanks, Mark. First of all, thank you for being here. So good to see so many familiar names on in the webinar, and do look forward to begin traveling and meeting with so many of you again face to face. I've not been with BMC CompuWare as long as Mark, just a mere 18 years, but a good amount of time, primarily with CompuWare. My current role is technical account manager. So my focus is on working with existing clients on assisting them on getting the maximum value out of currently licensed software assets. And events like this is just one of those types of activities. So thank you again for being here, and hope this is beneficial. So here's a brief agenda I put together. Again, pretty basic, but I think it's important to just have a good understanding or a benchmark, if you will, of some key concepts and terms before we launch into the series. You know, one is why DevOps? Well, actually, I missaid that. What is DevOps? And then shortly after, what is DevOps? Why DevOps? What are some of the market drivers and business drivers for implementing DevOps? And then we're going to touch on some key concepts and terms I'm sure many of you have heard in DevOps discussions, or will if you begin that journey. And then we're going to finally wrap up with some next steps and where to start. So first, what is DevOps? I mean, how do we get people speaking the same language, you know, whether from the operations organization, development organization, or even supporting a non-mainframe environment? How do you pull these people together? Well, a point we always like to make regarding DevOps is, don't get bogged down around, the exact term or an exact, fenced in definition, if you will. It's really one of those things where if you ask a half a dozen people what it is, you'll probably get a half a dozen different answers. What is important instead is that the practices and processes are successful. What DevOps is, quite frankly, just provides or simply provides a framework to bring in, mesh in operations processes with development processes and improve the overall software delivery. And it's really not new. It's about using technologies and techniques to introduce points of automation and integration where it makes sense, and then measuring to make sure that these changes that you made to your process actually achieve the desired results. So let's touch on each one of these just briefly. Automation. I mean, this is where you, quite frankly, can speed up and go faster. You can also improve quality because you're automating a best practice. So you have a consistent, repeatable process. Integration. Now, this is a way to even improve your automation and improve velocity, as well as the handoffs in between steps in your process. And then lastly, measurement. And, this is one I always say you can argue is equally as important as the other two. I mean, the last thing you want to do is automate a bad process. So always measure, make sure that whatever modifications or new points of integration or automation that is set up actually achieve the desired results. Now, the next point, and I'm going to camp here for a moment, this is largely vendor agnostic. So at the end of our time today, if you walk away thinking you just sat through a BMC sales presentation, we clearly missed the mark, and that's not the intent at all. I mean, DevOps is all about evaluating your current tooling, your environment, your current state and desired state, and then mapping out some first steps to begin that journey to meet your goals. That's why we're here today. And then the last bullet is we encourage you to approach this with a open mind or open set of eyes. I know Agile and DevOps have been around for years, and it's very likely you may have been involved in some projects that had some false starts or perhaps didn't go as planned. But recognize that things change, technologies change, integrations are available now that weren't even 3 to 5 years ago. So we encourage you to approach this series and your DevOps journey with a fresh set of eyes and an open mind. So Mark, that's a little bit about what DevOps is. Why don't you talk to us about why DevOps? What's motivating clients to explore this to begin with?
Yeah, thanks, Ward. So yeah, why DevOps and why now? There we go. So why DevOps, why now? A lot of reasons. Let me go through some of them. First of all, this is not news. Things are moving quickly, right? And the demands placed on us are there, and things are changing so much. I think like the past 2 years with the pandemic and how that's changed, like even more mobile needs, and the way people buy things has changed. It's just an example of how change is moving so quickly. And that means we need to change as quickly to respond to the demands of our customers. We need to match that pace. And we have to do this, but we have limitations on resources and time to be able to do that. And it's very difficult to meet those challenges. And on top of that, we have a changing workforce. So something has to change. We can't just keep doing things the way they've been doing all along. We have to work, well, they always say smarter rather than harder, and maybe that's part of it. The way we are working now isn't good enough, and we have to continuously improve. One thing is we can't continue working in silos, and by that, I mean, we need to pull all of IT together. We can't just say, well, we have the mainframe here and we work this way, and the distributed, I don't know, they do their thing over there. It can't work that way. And I'm going to get into more of that later, but we really need that same cadence and delivery timeline so that there's one IT organization with similar practices and, again, similar delivery timeframes. This isn't mainframe DevOps we'll be talking about. It's adding the mainframe into the DevOps you currently have. And it's bringing, just like we bring dev and ops together, we're going to bring the mainframe teams and the distributed teams together using DevOps. So DevOps is a means to align the organization for timely delivery to users, despite all the resource limitations and shifting. It's really the way you have to go. And it's something that we at BMC have adopted ourselves and have been using successfully for several years now. And what we're seeing at many customers as well. Well, so the current state again is this. We see a siloed mainframe. Now, this reflects not only your applications, but also how you work with things. So your applications may have data residing on the mainframe and other applications need to get to them, and that's fine. And the same with applications. They may use an API and call a mainframe application. It does the processing and they return it. So they're going to be different. What we really want and what really works well is you don't have that divide between them, that you just have applications and the mainframe ones are in there with the enterprise DevOps. The data is together and it's like some just happen to be on the mainframe and others are on other platforms, to make it so that you all work together and we don't have this artificial division. And part of the division is not really, you know, you're going to have different platforms and things, so you're going to have different tools to work with them. That will always be the case, and that's fine. But again, the processes and how you work together and using something that works well with one development team on your development team. It isn't that, oh, I'm on the mainframe, so I can't use Jenkins. No, you certainly can. You can use the code review techniques they use. It's learning from other teams and breaking this down so that's place in the middle isn't there and it's all one IT. And Ward, did you have something to add to that?
No, I was just going to say, Mark, you're exactly right. I mean, ultimately, the goal is, you know, not only for the teams to be pulled together, but they be using, in many cases, shared tooling. You mentioned Jenkins. That's just one example. We talk about other ones, you know, Sonar Lens, Sonar Cube, Atlassian, et cetera. I mean, the ultimate goal is for the mainframe really to just be viewed as another syntax. I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about some of the basic, you know, terms and conditions that you'll, not terms and conditions, terms and concepts that you'll hear, you know, thrown around a DevOps discussion. This certainly is not all of the, you know, full list, just a very brief list of some of the top ones. So mainstreaming the mainframe, you know, what is meant by that? You know, as Mark indicated earlier, you know, it's really just a concept that references removing the silos, you know, instead of having a mainframe process for development, a distributed process for development or ops and the web, et cetera. It's what we call an enterprise process, regardless of whether it's development, data management, or operational process. You're including the mainframe in that process. And the benefit, of course, is you know, leveraging automations and integrations and ideally tooling as well. Agile. This is a software development approach that focuses on delivering smaller units of work. I'm sure all of us are familiar with the term, you know, or phrase 2-week sprints or MVP, minimal viable product. That's delivering a unit of work with a minimum amount of the requirements to get quicker feedback from the business or the owner of that request to make sure it meets the requirement. So you may say that Agile defines the steps in the development process. Now, DevOps, on the other hand, you know, combines practices from operation and development to, you know, speed things up with the ultimate goal of shortening software delivery. So where you may think of Agile as defining development steps, you may think of DevOps as automating those steps, similar to an escalator. Shift left. This is another term I'm sure most of us heard about. You know, this is quite simply just moving as many things as early in the development cycle as possible. And for years, we've seen study after study comparing the cost of finding a performance issue or a code quality issue in development cycle as opposed to finding it in production. Especially nowadays where your production environment is largely customer facing and in real time. So the cost of having a outage or even a performance issue that impacts end user experience in the production environment is far more than capturing that during development or the test phase. So shift left. And then tool chain and pipeline. These are a couple of terms that often get are used interchangeably, but they're really not. A tool chain is a diagram that, quite frankly, identifies all the tooling in the environment and links them together based on how they are used. A pipeline, on the other hand, is a process, whatever process you're defining and identifying the tooling used with that process throughout the software delivery. So Mark, I'm going to transition to you and you'll talk to us a little bit about next steps and more specifically how to use both the tool chain and the pipeline.
Thanks, Ward. Yeah, so I mean, now that we know the terms and we understand, I think, what DevOps is and why you should use it, let's get into what the next steps would be. Now, in speaking to a group like this, it's difficult because you're probably all along the pathway on DevOps, and you might be, there might be a few, although with time that gets to be less, that haven't really done anything with there. There might be some that are very advanced. We're all somewhere along that, and that's fine. And in fact, I think you never get perfection. You're always looking to improve, and that's an important part of DevOps, is always looking for another connection. Where we've started when we work with our customers is with a chart like this, and it should be familiar to you. This is always shown for DevOps. It's pretty much the same chart. What we do is start off with this chart and say, here's all the functionalities that you need to do, what your organizations do, and then plug in the tools that you have. So let's see where you have tools and see if there's any gaps. And that becomes your tool chain because you get the tools. We have this one filled in with, these are ones like we use, but these are tools that are either BMC tools or tools that we work with and integrate with. So start with something like this, fill in your tools, and there might be some things we go, wow, we don't have anything like that. It may be that your group in the mainframe doesn't, but then when you talk to others in your organization, you'll find out that yes, they are using, they're using Jenkins or another tool like that, or Sonar. You're going to find that you actually have those tools in your organization. You just may not be using them right now. This process is very important to really bridge the gaps, not only in your tools, but between your groups, between the mainframe and distributed, and bringing the mainframe into your organization's DevOps. So Ward, you've worked with some customers on this too. What observations do you have?
Well, just a couple of basic ones, and forgive me if I'm stating something that's just too simple or obvious. But, it never goes without getting some surprise of the amount of value provided here. But simple as pulling the teams together and talking or meeting. Hey, you remember when we used to meet in actually conference rooms? But hopefully we're getting closer back to that. But you actually pulling the groups together and you're talking and you're sharing about what tools are available and what do you use for this process or that process or this task. And I can tell you without exception, and at least all the implementations and workshops I've been involved in every single scenario, there's multiple tooling or tooling that one group didn't know existed that another team is using for a specific purpose. So then they can talk about, hey, not only are we now aware of all the tooling that is available, but why is one used over the other? In what situation? Or do we have standards around this task or this process? So it really is a healthy discussion, and like I said, often a little bit of surprise at how much value it just has just from pulling all the various teams together and discussing what each other is doing and what, quite frankly, is the best way to consider standardizing on for an overall enterprise process.
Right. So the very fact of having this, I was going to say simple diagram, but it isn't that simple. Just having this as something to join the groups together and just to work through, that alone provides value. And I realize this may look daunting. I mean, it looks like, wow, but once you sit down and, that's the title of our presentation today is Relax, It's DevOps. Relax, go through this, go through that process, work with the other parts of your organization, fill this in, and you'll find out that you probably have everything you need already. Let me go to the next one. We'll talk about pipelines. There we go. So pipelines are once you've taken, you have all your tool chains and your tools identified, it's really looking at the processes that you do. So you might say, if someone is ready to commit their code and they've edited and they're ready, what do we do? And that's where, like in this case, we have up here, run in the bar at the, was it medium blue at the top, run unit tests, or I want to run layer tests. I want to run quality checks, do a build, and then I might want to do a deploy. It's looking at what your developers do, and some of those will be manual steps. And that's where you can look at and go, okay, is there a way we can automate this? And then when you look to, okay, once they're done with that, they've done their initial testing, we're going to go and put it to QA. Well, what needs to be done? Well, we have to deploy it to that environment. And then we might run a test with Strobe to look for performance. We might do security tests. So we're going to do maybe end user acceptance. So putting in all the processes you do and then look at those and say, is there some way we can automate every single one of these and connect them so that I don't have to have someone look at it and go, oh, this, I've been notified this is done. Now I will go and kick off this next one. So if there's something manual like that, I can tell you there's going to be a way that can be automated so that if that process is successful, it can automatically kick up the next one. Why do we do this? It's the lag time. It's even if it sits there for 5 minutes waiting for someone to look at it and kick off the next one, that's 5 minutes you lost. I start off with, we have this pressure to deliver and to get things out. All those little 5 minutes or hour or even a minute all adds up. Anything we can do to take that slack out and get things moving faster really adds up. Right, Ward?
Well, I would agree. And just another quick comment on just lessons learned from working with our clients in the field. I mean, it's easy to get overwhelmed's the wrong word, but come up with objections for not moving forward. I mean, one may think that, hey, I don't own this entire process. I only own a small piece of this, or I need to get buy-in from all the stakeholders of this particular application or whichever process we're evaluating here before I can make changes to it. Start small. I mean, you may only own or have influence over a section of this pipeline, and we encourage you to start small. It's definitely not a one and done approach at all. Maybe you just have control or ownership of testing. You want to explore opportunities to automate. Mark's already mentioned performance tuning, doing that earlier in the process. Maybe it's something of, setting up a quality gate, integrating with one of your other tools that you have today to have a quality gate in between the steps in the process. So we encourage you to, start small. It's definitely not an all or nothing approach, but really a phased approach over time.
Right. And Ward, I think of it as, you mentioned stairs and escalators. It's like climbing a 10-story building to get something to deployment. and we look at it, and right now it might be that it's a manual process as I have to climb up all those stairs to get to each level, each floor. And if by identifying this, we say, you know what, between floors 5 and 6, we can install that escalator to make it go quicker and easier, that's okay. You don't have to say, no, I know we can put an escalator in for 5 and 6, but we're not going to do that until we get them all. It's not that at all. It's if I have to climb up 10 stairs, if I have one where I can relax and let it go up, I'll do it. And then over time, we can say, you know, that escalator, it's really slow. We found a way to speed it up a little bit. You can speed that one up. So these are really independent, and you can work on them and implement escalators and speed up the escalators independently. And you can take, so if you're looking at quality testing, say, okay, we're going to automate this process. And that helps everyone. You don't have to wait for the whole thing. You don't have to get it all there. And you can always tweak it and make it faster. Get to the next slide. There we go. So here's another example. You can, I guess this proves that you can diagram them in many different ways, but this is another way to look at it. So I have code changes, I check out the code, and then I can work on understanding the code and then modifying the code. Those might be right now manual steps where, you know, I go into, in this case, we have ISPW, and I go and I click and I check out the code. Great. Understanding the code is used Topaz for program analysis, and it'll automatically chart it. So it does have automation there to chart it. They understand it. They go and they do the editing, and then they can go in and run through like expert to review it. But then they would build their test cases and run it through code coverage. Get your data ready, generate. So you're outlining the steps, but these are tools that can help you do them. And then we move into testing, and then we can do more automation that we showed before. It's breaking down each of the steps and looking at every one of them and seeing, can I automate it? Or is there a tool that I can use that will make this step go easier and faster? So we have here like the Topaz. Could it be that instead of working in the green screen, would it be easier if I used Eclipse because I can pull in other tools and things like the charting in Topaz for program analysis? Or I could have it on multiple screens and I can look at my data while I'm looking at the program. Can I improve my process that way? And so it's improving your productivity even for the manual steps, but also the automation. Right, Ward?
I couldn't agree more, and would also like to make the point of, you know, in addition to, you know, reviewing what tooling you have in your environment, it's also a great opportunity to review what integrations exist. I mean, those of you that have, you know, taken a hard look at the slide may have noticed that there are several products up there that are, one, not BMC CompuWare products, but two, not mainframe products. So I think we're up to approximately 40 different integrations that we provide as a service and maintenance for no additional fee. That's right, no additional fee. January mark, I think it was what, our 29th consecutive quarter of coming out with net new capabilities.
Right.
And I'd love to say that's our developers and product managers, you know, coming up with all of this on their own, and they do contribute immensely to the product development roadmap. But many of these enhancements are requests from our clients that are on the DevOps journey, and providing integrations to some of these third-party products is just a part of that. So as you look at your chains, highly encourage you to take a hard look at what integrations exist today to increase your automation and integration and ultimately velocity of your pipelines.
Right. And the only way that, you know, you mentioned the 20 whatever, I keep losing track of quarters we've done of innovation. The only way we've been able to do it is to adopt these practices and continuously refine them ourselves. So we learn a lot from our own experiences and put that in the product. And again, working with customers to learn what they need to make this quicker. And that's how we built out these pipelines over the years. So let's turn to some resources. If you've gone along that far and understand, what DevOps is and are, somewhere along the process, hopefully you've gotten some tips on this, but here's what we have that really, from our experience, we recommend as being very, very helpful. The first one is our 10 steps ebook. We have the link there, but you can just search for BMC 10 steps for mainframe agility, you'll find it. You can download this ebook, and it's been so helpful at many sites because it's very practical. It really lays out simple steps to go through and get into DevOps. And you don't have to take them in order, but you can really work through them. And Ward, you've worked with some customers with this ebook, right?
Yes, I have, and again, I think you just touched on one of the huge benefits of the document or the ebook, is although it identifies 10 steps and the 10 key milestones for accomplishing DevOps, they're not, most of them are not sequential. So it identifies several points that you can begin your journey. It just depends on what your priorities are. Some clients may be modernizing the IDE and providing an Eclipse-based GUI to their mainframe developers, or a consistent user interface for mainframe and distributed environments. So you may be focused on the IDEs. Another ones may be wanting to transition from waterfall to agile. So implementing taking some first steps of implementing agile may be a higher priority for you. Others may be exploring the opportunity to automate testing, just because of the sheer amount of time that is spent in the testing phase of the development lifecycle. Others, looking at your source code management tool. Does it support parallel development? How can we support agile with our current offerings? So yeah, it's a very rich document, but one of the things I think is most attractive about it, like I said, it's very flexible. It provides several different ways to begin your journey.
Yeah, and so the next one is building a modern DevOps toolchain for the mainframe, and that's an infographic, but it's a nice chart. So I encourage you to just look at it rather than me explaining it, but it will be a nice thing that you can use for discussions and shows how things are laid out. The third bullet point, DevOps how-to, this one it's really an amazing resource because we showed you the tool chains, we talked about pipelines, but you're still wondering, well, how do I do that? Where do I start? How does Jenkins hook into this? And what APIs are available? The answers are all there. If you go to that site, you'll see documentation on all of our published APIs, and there's a lot of REST APIs that we have available. It also has information on the CLIs that we have. And then it shows you step by step how to set up pipelines. And it gives examples of here's how to use the Jenkins plugin to download source so that you can use it for Sonar. All those things, I use it myself when I'm like, oh, geez, I need to go and set this up. I can go through there and it will step by step tell me how to set it up. So really go in there, poke around, and I think it's, again, our theme is relax. I think this will help you relax because you can see that we've already, by working with customers over the year, come up with a lot of these pipelines and how to do it. And we have instructions that have been used by many on how to do it. So it's a huge resource. Integrations, Ward's talked about the integrations. That page there lists the current ones. And I encourage you to keep going back to it because every quarter we're announcing more and more integrations. And then the last two are our podcasts and blogs. We do put out blogs every week. There's new blogs, and they're not just product announcements, although some are, but a lot of them are about these issues and things. I've written a lot myself on things that I focused with in working with my teams with Agile and DevOps, but also talking to other developers and other product managers and our customers about experiences. So I think you'll find the blogs very useful, and the podcasts where we pull in a lot of our BMC experts and talk about issues of just like this, what we've talked about today is how to set up pipelines and what works well. They're short, they're usually like 20, 25 minutes. But I encourage you to check them out. I think you'll find them a good resource. So Terry?
Thank you, Ward and Mark, for a job well done. Before we start answering the questions, I did want to share, if you'd like a copy of the tool chain document, either pre-filled, so you can kind of get an example, or blank, or even an example of some of the pipelines, though we're going to dive deeper in pipelines in March, just reach out and we can get you, copies of those documents. Also, Ward mentioned the DevOps workshop. I mean, I know we're still doing what we call DevOps workshops and value stream mapping sessions, which helps you find where your bottlenecks are. And that's kind of where you would start working on your DevOps journey. Just reach out to the TAM, whoever sent you the invite to the session, and we can work with them to get you that information. So now I'm going to hop into the questions. And the very first question is, what tools would I need to acquire, at least at first?
Well, I mean, that's where, yeah, I think where you would go through the process we mentioned and do a gap analysis and find out what things you have and then what you need. And from that, you might determine there are tools that you would like. Let's say that you find that the code quality checks that Sonar offers could be helpful. Or there's some tools like we integrate with one from ASG that does JCL analysis. So you would have to really look at it, but you're definitely going to start with something like Jenkins or GitHub Actions or be Azure DevOps to run your pipelines.
Thanks, Mark. The next question is, what training would you recommend?
Wow. I think definitely if you're looking at Agile, because working with Agile really works so well with DevOps, I don't see how you could really do DevOps and still work waterfall and really meet these timelines. So you'd really want to work with Agile. You'd want to look at Agile certification. As far as understanding DevOps concepts and the different tools, myself have used the LinkedIn courses. They've been very helpful. And there's a lot of good videos out on YouTube as well that can help you understand some of the DevOps concepts and how to set pipelines. And again, our DevOps site has a lot of, it's not training, but a lot of information.
Yeah, just a quick comment on additional resources that are available. We did touch on the DevOps workshop. Let me add a little more color to that, to those that may not have be familiar with that term or that offering. But BMC CompuWare, as you would suspect, has several DevOps and Agile SMEs, where this is what they do. They work with clients all day, every day on how to approach the DevOps journey. Where are they with their tooling, and work with them on the tool chain and pipeline exercises, and make some recommendations and observations on where they may start and initial sense of where they may get the biggest value, et cetera, and so on. So we can help with that. Also, our field solution consultants, they are also very well trained not only on the solutions, but the integrations to our third-party products. I noticed in the chat, someone said Sonar is not a BMC product. That's correct. Yeah, we're very well versed in leveraging the integrations with other third-party products, so we can assist with that as well. In addition to the online resources Mark referenced, we do also have internal resources that are available to you, again, as a service and maintenance.
So a question just popped up and it said, can you repeat what kind of DevOps workshops I can have with BMC? So I don't know if you guys want to hop on that or, want me to speak to that, but, Ward, I know you've done a few of them. So
Yeah,
where can you start?
Yeah, I've done a couple, so I'm kind of a broad brush approach. So let me take a first stab at it, and you can provide some additional detail. So the two different types of workshops we provide. One is I would say it's really more of an education. It's what is DevOps, why do it, and a much deeper dive on what is involved, what teams are involved, what individuals are involved, where do you start. It's essentially a great first step for the organization to, forgive the pun, but get everybody speaking the same language and aligned to the goals and understand the benefit before you really get started. Now, the second workshop that I've been involved in and we offer is, as you would suspect, leverages the first, or if your organization is already at a place where you feel like you got a clear understanding of DevOps and Agile and what your goals and priorities are. So it's roll up the sleeves and let's get started. Let's begin those tool chain pipeline exercises, or if you already have those, discuss where it makes sense to start and what integrations can be leveraged, what products can be leveraged, and help map out some steps to actually, begin work on specifically on your identified pipelines to accomplish your DevOps goals. Terry?
So Ward, I'm going to piggyback on your comment. So to me, there's a third workshop. So really the second workshop that Ward talked about is starting to sit down with your distributed team, your internal teams, and saying, what tools do we have at our hands, right? What are our processes at a more theoretical view, if you want to call it that. And then we have what's called a value stream mapping session. And that's where we may sit down with one group within your organization. Testing seems to be the big one, to understand where your bottlenecks are. What is the value stream mapping in 10 seconds or less, and a tool, I would unmute you if I could figure out how to do that, because he's one of the guys that delivers this. But value stream mapping is, let's look at your process. What steps are repeated? What steps are taking the longest, right? You can't go agile if it's taking you 4 weeks to 6 weeks to test, right? You've just blown your quarterly drop if it's taking you that long to test. So there's really basically three more. One is a high level, kind of what this next month's session is just going to introduce you to the concepts. Then taking it down a level, looking at what do you currently have in your shop that you can utilize and where you want to automate. And then the third is now getting down to the nitty gritty of which parts of your software development lifecycle are causing the biggest challenges. They're your biggest bottleneck. We scheduled this for an hour. We've really tried to get it done in 45 minutes. So I'm going to ask one more question and then I'm going to wrap it up. There are some additional questions that are out there. We will get them answered and send them to you with the links to both the recording and the presentation. But, this is a pretty general question, Mark. What are some of the things that people forget when they start this journey?
Oh, that's wow. I think one thing is maybe I don't know if they forget, but it's the resistance that some people have to this, the resistance to change, and maybe that can be overlooked rather than forgotten, is it's hard to really sell a change. And so you really have to show the benefits and how it makes their lives easier. For a developer to get rid of those manual steps, slogging up that staircase and putting in an escalator, and say that we're going to automate this, and that's going to make your life easier because now you can not focus on that, you can focus on the important things. So I think that we kind of forget that resistance, and we may be sold on this ourselves, but we also have to explain it to everybody how that's going to help them and make their jobs easier.
Hey, Terry.
I think it goes back to working smarter, not necessarily harder. We're all trying to do more with less today. So how do we make our lives easier? Yes, Ford?
Yeah, I mean, just something on that same note, and Mark did touch on it briefly earlier on in the presentation, but I don't know if this falls under the umbrella of clients forget, or in some cases just may not be aware if they're in the mainframe development group, for example. But the distributed teams in many cases have already begun this journey. So there are DevOps coaches or agile coaches in the distributed environment that may already have a project or implementation or standards in place. So I encourage you to explore your organization to see if you see any folks with those titles or roles, and then leverage their work today. And as Mark indicated, bring the mainframe into your existing DevOps processes by leveraging their work already done.
Yeah, and Terry, speaking of forgetting, I'd forgotten one other thing is to establish a baseline. That before you start, I think we're all like, oh, I'm going to get into it. Not having the metrics in place to understand where you are now means you never can show that you've improved, and that's part of that selling improvement and saying, wow, we're at this, and now we implemented this, and it went from so many days or hours down to this many minutes. Establishing the baseline on all your processes so that you can go back, improve success, and then keep up with those metrics. That's something I think we're so excited to get forward, we forget to capture the baseline.
Yeah, when we talk baseline, Mark, is as Ward can attest to, I've done a few of these workshops, and light bulbs go off in my head every single time I'm in one of them. It takes repetitive hearing things for it to click in my brain. But when we talk baseline, we're talking about mean time to resolution. So if it takes you 4 weeks to resolve something, let's document that so that we can see the impact we're having. So, what will come out of some of these workshops is where you should measure. So mean time to resolution, number of defects, how many times you have to regress stuff. So a lot of that will come out of these workshops. So guys, I want to wrap this up. We really are getting close to the top of the hour, and I want to give everybody a few minutes back. I want to again thank Ward and Mark for their time today. I want to thank everybody that hung in there. I know we've lost a few, but they'll get this recording. I want to thank you. I do want to ask you to please take the survey at the end. It literally is 4 questions. No filled in answers, just click a box and you're done. It really does help us to understand how these sessions help everybody else. And please sign up for the rest of these DevOps sessions. You should be getting emails shortly with registrations again for the March one and for the April one. And I believe the March one is flexing your DevOps muscles, making a good pipeline great. And that's on March 24th. And you'll hear my melodic voice again on that one. And then in April, it's AMI OI monitoring. We're not necessarily following the software development lifecycle. We're just picking different parts of it and building out on the whole DevOps messaging. Again, thank you very much and have a great day.